This is a re-review of a game that I did a video on a few months ago. The old review is no longer on the channel, and I think it is the worst review that I have ever done. It isn't the worst review in terms of the like to dislike ratio, I just got sick of the game quite early on and the quality of the review suffered because of it. But I think there were some external factors to why I didn't want to play the game, and now that a few months have passed, I'm willing to play it again and do a fairer review. The reboot of the TOCA series was kind of off to a good start. The first game from 2002 did get average to favourable reviews, but in 2021 it is very bad, especially when comparing it to other racing games that were released at the time, such as Gran Turismo 3 and Sega GT 2002. The game has not aged well at all. The one thing that made the game terrible were the physics, as cars didn't drive properly. The issue was that Codemasters had clearly reused the physics engine from Colin McRae Rally 3 without much modification to the handling model, which was not a good choice. Especially as that was a rally game where cars felt like they were floating on tarmac and cars kinda steered from the centre instead of the front wheels, which is an issue that I'm finding in a lot of other racing games as of late. In other words, cars didn't have much grip and pivoted round corners. 2 years later, Codemasters released the second game in the rebooted series called TOCA Race Driver 2. It is better in every way, but there are still quite a few things that I don't like about the game. For the second time in the series, the British Touring Car Championship was missing, the first game being TOCA World Touring Cars on the first PlayStation. So calling them both TOCA games is a little bit misleading, as they have nothing to do with the BTCC whatsoever. The game does have the Seat Cupra Championship, which was another racing series organised by TOCA, but that isn't enough to justify calling this a TOCA game. Just like the first TOCA Race Driver, there is a story of some kind. It's just bits in between championships where the team boss tells you how to drive and then occasionally yells at a woman for various reasons.
He's doing hundreds of miles an hour. If God had wanted him to wave, he'd have made him a member of the royal family.
Or insult someone.
He's an ugly bastard, isn't he?
It's not as bad as the story in the first game where someone dies at the beginning. And you have to keep in mind that these games were meant to be played by children. I do say this in quite a few of my reviews, but I think a game like this doesn't need a story whatsoever. I think the only racing games that need a story are the ones that are open world, as it does add something to the game. But not track-based games like this. In a way, it kind of cheapens the whole game, but it does have some funny moments.
The only part I want to see is yours leaving the pits.
With all of that being said, I do like that the story isn't so over the top and over dramatised, and the story does explain why you can't choose certain cars for a race. I really did not like racing in TOCA Race Driver 2 when I started playing it a few months ago after completely forgetting about the game for 10 years or so, which is not good. But after playing it again for the re-review, I started to really get into it. Codemasters did fix the issue where cars pivoted round corners, but they still felt very floaty. And then we get to the AI. The AI have got more of a personality, which I originally absolutely hated, but my views on this are slightly more positive now than they were a few months ago. People say that it's good that the AI have a personality, and to an extent, yeah, it is, but it is very, very frustrating when you're on the last few laps in a race and you're doing well, and then all of a sudden an AI driver decides it's going to crash into the back of you, which pretty much ends your chances of getting a podium, and so you have to do the race all over again, which can take up to 10 minutes, and that is another 10 minutes of driving with these horrible floaty physics. But luckily that didn't happen too often. AI drivers recognising you on the track is absolutely brilliant, and I can't say anything bad about that, but they are too aggressive, which is mainly what I didn't like originally. I had a few people in the comments of the original review of the game calling it a simulator. Any game where you're able to do almost 180 miles per hour in a stock Ford F-150 Lightning is not a simulator at all, therefore you should probably stop calling it one. There are a lot of different race categories in this game, and even though this is another area of the game where my views have slightly changed, I think there are still some issues. A lot of the time, the game will force you to drive cars that you don't want to drive, but you do get to drive them later on in the game after going through a few championships. I think the order that you do things could have been improved as you swap between road and race cars throughout the game. I think it would have been better to have all of the road car events at the beginning of the game, and then the race car events later on. The one part of the game that I don't have any negative views on is the track selection, which is something that the TOCA series has always been good at. There are tracks from all over the world, including places that don't appear in other racing games, such as Kyalami in South Africa and Loch Rannoch in Scotland. There's even a rallycross track at Brands Hatch, which I didn't even know existed until I reviewed the game the first time round. The tracks look good, but not as good as in other racing games that were out at the time, like Gran Turismo 3. But Codemasters probably didn't have the budget that Polyphony Digital had, or the support from Sony Computer Entertainment. TOCA Race Driver 2 has also got a nice selection of cars because of the large amount of race categories. You have classics such as the Jaguar E-Type, modern sports and supercars like the Aston Martin DB7, Ford GT90 and the Koenig Comp 2002, which was a tuned Ferrari Testarossa, and then we get to the race cars. TOCA Race Driver 2 has got so many different race cars. You have things like DTM, Formula Ford, the Seat Cupra championship cars, and even truck racing, which in the story is a bit of a joke. Just like the story itself. I am a little bit disappointed that there's no BTCC cars or WTCC cars in the game at all, and some of the cars feel like they belong in the Colin McRae rally games and not TOCA Race Driver, like the Bowler Wildcat and the Mitsubishi Lancer Evo rally car. The car assets look good. I would say they actually look as good as the cars in Forza Motorsport, which was released the year after. I know I recommended this game in the last TOCA review, but this game has not aged well at all. And there are so many games that were released on the PlayStation 2 and original Xbox, which are a lot better than TOCA Race Driver 2, but offer the same kind of thing, including the third game in the rebooted series. So that is the one to go for, and I can't wait to review that one. This has been my review of TOCA Race Driver 2 on the original Xbox. If you liked this review, then please give it a like. If you didn't, then give it a dislike, and if you want to see more, then please consider subscribing and joining the Discord server, linked in the description. Goodbye.